News!
Okay, we'll start with this. It's official. Sonny Edwards will be having his first fight under the Matchroom banner, voluntary defense against Campos, and on the undercard, we're going to be seeing Nina Hughes make her first title defense of her newly obtained WBA title. Opposite the ring, Shannon Courtney, former WBA champion Shannon Courtney. Initially,
We knew it would be going down in June 10th.
but first I thought it would be Josh Warrington headlining, not Sonny Edwards. Better still, it's a great card.
Edwards versus Campos, Johnson versus Courtney, Hughes versus Courtney. Johnny Fisher's going to be on the undercard.
He's real popular. Shannon Ryan, one of Matchroom's recent signees who crossed over from Boxer over to Matchroom. She's going to be on the undercard as well. It's a good-looking card.
3 title fights.
Let's get down to brass tacks. Will Nina Hughes be able to retain the WBA title opposite the ring former champion Shannon Courtney? And being honest, I don't think so. I don't.
Nope.
I think that Shannon's style is all wrong for Nina. Nina, the pint-sized bantamweight.
I don't want to underestimate Nina. She's already surprised me once when she beat Jamie Mitchell. I thought Jamie was going to win that fight.
She didn't. Nina Hughes pried the WBA title away from her. I think Nina's a good fighter, good mid-range to inside fighter, but looking at this thing, Shannon's got too many advantages over Nina. She's bigger, she's younger,
She's stronger. Punch for punch, I'd wager that Shannon Courtney's a stronger puncher than Nina Hughes. And that's not saying that Nina's not strong. That's just saying Shannon is stronger.
punch for punch in the exchange. I think Shannon Courtney packs a bigger wallop, a bigger punch than Nina Hughes, even though Nina Hughes is the more compact fighter, smaller fighter. She's also the older fighter and the smaller fighter.
Shannon's going to have height on Nina, reach on Nina, I think power as well.
Nina's a strong puncher, mid-range to inside. She's got some power, don't get me wrong, but getting mid-range to inside, I think, is going to be difficult for Nina, who to the eye has slower feet than Shannon Courtney, and because she's smaller than Shannon with slower feet than Shannon,
It's one of Shannon's strengths, movement.
Nina Hughes, a very pint-sized bantamweight, fights out of a wide stance and a slight crouch, inching her way forward to get off shots mid-range to inside. Opposite the ring, a fleet of foot Shannon Courtney.
Shannon's going to create space to walk Nina into punches.
Because Nina doesn't have much of a choice. She has to get mid-range to inside on Shannon Courtney.
Give Shannon an advantage.
Shannon Courtney has more in-and-out game than Nina Hughes. Moreover, if you notice, Shannon's punches are shorter and sharper, faster than what you get from Nina Hughes, mid-range to inside.
Nina's work mid-range to inside.
Nina's punches mid-range to inside aren't as short and sharp as what you get from Shannon. Her punches are a bit wide. She's open to be countered.
Maybe thinking to yourself, if that's the case, how'd she beat Jamie Mitchell? Jamie Mitchell beat Shannon Courtney and Nina Hughes beat Jamie Mitchell, but
It's a triangle theory. Triangle theories don't work, and it's important to note that while Jamie Mitchell did beat Shannon Courtney, Shannon was fighting injured in that fight. One of her legs.
she wasn't able to move around the way she normally does, and movement is one of Shannon Courtney's characteristics as a fighter. It's part of her overall makeup.
Fortunately for Shannon, in that Jamie Mitchell fight, she was very much a stationary target. And that's a big part of how Jamie Mitchell beat her. That's not discrediting Jamie Mitchell's victory over Shannon, but the facts are what the facts are. She was fighting an injured fighter. That's not the fighter that Nina Hughes is about to face.
Not what she's going to have in front of her.
Shannon Courtney has since had corrective surgery for that injury. She's recuperated and rehabilitated. She's bounced back off the loss to Jamie Mitchell, had a rebound fight, and now she's fighting Nina. I like Shannon's chances.
I think she's got the right style, the right ingredients for the job. I think that Shannon Courtney is going to become a 2-time WBA bantamweight champion. I think the title's going to change hands.
And when it does, that would in effect set up a rematch between Shannon Courtney and Ebony Bridges, this time for 2 titles instead of just 1.
It's not that I don't think Nina's a good fighter. I do think Nina's a good fighter, capable, but stylistically, I can't pick her.
Certainly more likable to me than Shannon Courtney, who's not everybody's cup of tea, but Shannon's a good fighter, and she doesn't get enough credit for that. She's actually one of the more formidable bantamweights in today's bantamweight division, and that often gets lost in what is a popularity contest.
Yeah.
That Shannon ain't that popular, but she can fight.
And I think she's going to win this one. I think she's going to beat Nina Hughes.
In other news, numbers continue to pour in reference to this past weekend's fight. Keith Idek tweeted, "I've been told that the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight generated just over 1.2 million pay-per-view buys across all platforms, much more than most insiders projected. Ticket revenue was approximately $22.8 million, making it the fifth largest gate for boxing in Nevada history.
The event was a success, which isn't surprising.
These numbers are in keeping with what DAZN's Ade Oladipo stated, what he was hearing around the rumor mill, the water cooler, that the pay-per-view did in fact do in excess of 1 million pay-per-view buys, whereas boxing insider Rick Glacier, he put out a more moderate estimate, a more moderate number, somewhere around 600 to 700,000 buys. Though in truth, whether you go with Rick's number, Ade's number, or Keith's number, they all tell the same story, that the event was successful.
Which isn't surprising.
That didn't do 2 million pay-per-view buys like Oscar estimated, but still, they made money.
And because the event was successful, there are many already heralding Gervonta Davis, Gervonta being the victor, being the winner of the fight. They're heralding him as the face of boxing, though. You know how I feel.
This singular event, this event alone, is not enough to crown Gervonta Davis the face of boxing, because you've got to keep the ball rolling. In order to really be the face of boxing, you've got to make more money than everybody else, sell more than everybody else, generate more than everybody else.
It's more of a marathon than a sprint.
You're not the face of boxing after one fight, just one fight, no matter how successful that one fight was, because what are you going to do in your next fight?
When you don't have a high-profile dance partner. Look at Canelo Alvarez. To many, he's still the face of boxing, but why?
Because Canelo Alvarez can get out there with a little-known Russian like a Dmitry Bivol and still sell 500,000 pay-per-view buys with a guy most Americans don't know, most casual boxing fans. But he can still bring in those kind of numbers off his name alone, whereas Gervonta, off his name alone, you see what his numbers look like.
He couldn't crack 300,000 buys off his name alone.
I understand there's a lot of people out there that want to be obtuse about this. They get in their feelings when you point that out, but I don't care about your feelings.
No.
The facts are what the facts are.
So what can Gervonta Davis do to keep the ball rolling? What can he do to build upon this past weekend's success?
So that he can, in effect, over time, become the face of boxing. Well, the missing ingredient in this past weekend's fight that has been missing in every other fight he's had leading up to that one is that he was actually fighting someone that people wanted to see him fight. People didn't care about him fighting Leo Santa Cruz or Hector Garcia.
People didn't care about those guys. They didn't care about those fights.
Not on the same scale as this one, this past weekend's fight. They didn't care about Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero.
Those fights had no sizzle, no intrigue, and those fighters, they didn't have the following that Ryan has.
You say that, well, most fighters don't have the following that Ryan had, so what can you do? In that situation, what do you do to keep the momentum going? You fight in fights that people want to see, because if nothing else, that adds sizzle.
Intrigue.
That's what he's got to do to really become the face of boxing, because he ain't there yet. You can't use this past weekend's fight as the unofficial coronation for Gervonta Davis when he can get out there later on this year.
Go ahead, fight Rolly again on pay-per-view and see what that does. Fight Isaac Cruz.
Do a rematch and see what that does at the box office. Then come back and tell me that he's the face of boxing.
He isn't.
To become that, he can't keep fighting those kind of guys. To become the face of boxing, he's got to consistently fight in the big fights. Big fights like Canelo Alvarez did for many years.
Yeah, Canelo had a string of small pay-per-views like Gervonta Davis. You know, the Lara fight, the Angulo fight, the Liam Smith fight.
I will add that every single one of those aforementioned pay-per-views sold more than Gervonta Davis sells off his name alone.
600,000 with Amir Khan, 900,000 with Miguel Cotto, 1 million with Chavez, 1 million with Golovkin.
He fought Golovkin in 3 fights, and all 3 times they sold over 1 million pay-per-view buys.
That's why they call him the face of boxing.
More recently, he got out there with a little-known Russian in Dmitry Bivol, carried the fight off his name alone, and was still able to sell a little over 500,000 pay-per-view buys. That's the kind of drawing power that he's got.
So you ask yourself, how can Gervonta Davis do this? What does he have to do to become the face of boxing?
He's got to fight Devin Haney. He's got to fight Shakur Stevenson.
He's got to fight in fights that intrigue the boxing community at large, intrigue them enough that they have to watch, and in order to watch, they have to buy.
Intrigue them like the Cotto fight intrigued audiences for Canelo. Intrigue them like the Golovkin fights.
You go back to fighting the Rolly Romeros and Isaac Cruzes of the world, there's no intrigue in those fights.
You've got to fight in fights that people actually want to see, fights they're willing to pay for. And most people didn't want to see Gervonta Davis fight the likes of a Rolly Romero and Isaac Cruz, a Hector Garcia, these kind of guys. You know who they want to see you fight.
And therein lies a dilemma, which is why I think this success will be short-lived. In Gervonta Davis's very next fight, he's likelier to fight Rolly Romero again than a Shakur Stevenson.
He's likelier to fight Rolly Romero or Isaac Cruz in a rematch than the winner of Haney versus Lomachenko.
He is.
And you think about how this past weekend's fight came into being. How many other guys out there are going to accept those kind of terms? Weight clauses and rehydration clauses, one-way rematch clauses. I mean, these other guys, they're not going to let you jerk them around.
You can say you're the A-side. You can say you're the A-side till you're blue in the face.
Based on what you did with Ryan Garcia in a fight that he helped you sell. You can do that, but unless you're actually going to fight in intriguing fights, those numbers are going to nosedive. I can't stress that enough.
To be the face of boxing, you've got to consistently fight in big fights.
Gervonta Davis just did that for the first time in his entire boxing career. None of those other pay-per-views he was in were big fights.
This one was.
To overtake anybody and everybody else in the boxing landscape, your fights have to generate more revenue, more interest among the boxing community at large.
That's how it works.
Fat fucking chance of you doing that, isolating yourself from everyone else. The people over there at ESPN very recently decided to update their current pound-for-pound rank standings, and you guys know how I feel about this list. I don't actually abide by ESPN's pound-for-pound list or Ring Magazine's.
I've got my own, which makes the most sense to me.
So according to ESPN, Gervonta Davis barely misses out on cracking the latest ESPN pound-for-pound list. There are seemingly 10 spots for 11 worthy pound-for-pound boxers, with little separation between the three lightweights.
Gervonta Davis is not a pound-for-pound fighter, and this past weekend's fight doesn't prove that he is.
You might have found an avenue of opportunity in Ryan Garcia. You might have found a niche to where you can make a lot of money, and not put yourself in harm's way. You're not under threat of losing to Ryan Garcia the way you might be with Devin Haney, the way you might be with Shakur Stevenson, and the way you might have been some time ago against Vasyl Lomachenko. You might have found an area of opportunity to where you can make money comfortably without taking any risks.
And that's fine.
Make your money, but don't expect people to believe that Ryan Garcia was the same caliber of fighter as a Vasyl Lomachenko, a Shakur Stevenson, or a Devin Haney, especially not a Devin Haney who he could have fought years ago, but he decided to walk away.
He was okay fighting Luke Campbell for a WBC interim title, but after he beat him, when push came to shove, and he could have fought Devin Haney for the full title, he chose not to.
He never proved he was a better fighter than Devin. Devin, who currently reigns as his division's undisputed champion. Am I supposed to overlook that? Am I supposed to overlook that Devin Haney has fought anyone from Jojo Diaz to Jorge Linares to George Kambosos 2 times? He's about to fight Vasyl Lomachenko, and Ryan has fought who?
Luke Campbell.
Who got beat by Vasyl Lomachenko. Nothing in Ryan Garcia's resume communicates that he's a better fighter than Devin. Thus, Gervonta beating Ryan.
That doesn't prove he's a better fighter than Devin. Gervonta Davis campaigns at the same weight where Devin Haney reigns as that division's undisputed champion. If he wants to prove that he's better than Devin, and he is a pound-for-pound fighter, you know what to do.
Get in the ring and show him who you are.
Get in the ring with somebody better than Ryan Garcia, because beating Ryan Garcia doesn't prove to anyone that you're a pound-for-pound fighter.
Ryan wasn't more proven than undisputed champion Devin Haney or former champion Vasyl Lomachenko. He wasn't more proven than Shakur Stevenson, who here today is already a 2-division champion. He's shooting for a 3rd.
He's trying to become a 3-division champion now. What was Ryan?
As a result of ESPN snubbing Gervonta Davis, you can expect to see the usual outcry from the usual suspects who take issue whenever somebody doesn't play along with their own delusions.
There are illusions about Gervonta Davis, how he's supposed to be the face of boxing.
Even though the only reason that fight sold what it sold is because he had Ryan Garcia to help him. They want him to be a pound-for-pound fighter. They want you and me to consider him a 3-division champion when he's only really been a full champion at 1 weight, and that was super featherweight. At lightweight, he's got a baby belt, and it's super lightweight.
He used to have a baby belt, but those weren't full titles. When he was up there was already an undisputed champion crowned, Josh Taylor, and he didn't fight him.
So what the hell makes him a 3-division champion?
Nothing.
What the hell's supposed to make him a pound-for-pound fighter?
Nothing.
But as you can imagine, Gervonta Davis's core supporters take issue with this because of what I told you in my previous video. They want the face of boxing to be a guy that they identify with because they live vicariously through him. So when ESPN rejects him as a pound-for-pound fighter, they themselves feel rejected by ESPN.
These are sick people.
Sick fucking people. You can tell them everything I just told you, and it's all gonna fall on deaf ears because they're not using logic.
Don't waste good logic on illogical people.
It's an exercise of futility. It's all about feelings with these guys, how they feel.
Nobody gives a fuck how you feel.
Nobody. You can rank this guy on your own pound-for-pound list. Hell, you can rank him twice, thrice, 4 times.
Rank him.
You're still gonna moan about how ESPN doesn't have him on their list because you want ESPN's approval. Didn't I tell you in my previous video, didn't I tell you that this is all about validation? And they don't feel validated unless Gervonta Davis is a consensus pound-for-pound fighter.
They want me and you to play along.
Gervonta's fans do. When I tell you that he's not going to do in his next fight what he did in his last fight with Ryan, because his last fight involved Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan helped sell that thing. When I tell you this, they get upset about it.
They get mad.
But if Ryan Garcia wasn't the missing ingredient, the big box office numbers, you tell me why Gervonta was on pay-per-view 5 times and never came close to doing numbers like this.
Why? Why is that?
These guys ain't got no critical thinking skills, and that really is more their problem than mine. All I can tell you is that beating Ryan Garcia, to many, doesn't prove that Gervonta Davis is a pound-for-pound fighter. If he wants to do that, he's got to fight a Shakur Stevenson. He's got to fight a Devin Haney, or maybe move up in weight. Take on the winner of Taylor versus Lopez.
That'll do it.
If it matters that much to you, that you're shaking your fists at the sky that ESPN left him out of their pound-for-pound list, go make your own.
See who gives a damn.
You can. And that's how I know that this is all about validation, because nobody's stopping these guys from ranking Gervonta Davis on their own pound-for-pound lists. That's not enough.
They know nobody cares about their opinions.
You can rank Gervonta Davis as both the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and number 4, and number 5 pound-for-pound fighter on your own list, and nobody cares.
Nobody will.
That's why you're all hung up on ESPN's pound-for-pound list. Now, I myself, I don't abide by their list. I have my own. I don't abide by Ring Magazine's list either, but I saw the reaction this post got.
Yeah, I don't have Gervonta on mine either.
It's gonna take more than beating Ryan Garcia to crack my list. I knew that kid was little more than just a prospect going into this thing.
Bottom line, those eggs need more bacon.